Here's a little story that must be told.
And it goes a little something like this.
And welcome back to Back in the Blog. This week we are going to talk about one of my favorite nights ever at SOB's, at one of my favorite places ever. That was a double XL and Hennessy showcase. It was called The Break. It was like highlighting up and coming artists that double XL did. And it was the first time I saw Kendrick Lamar live. The showcase was showing off King Mez, Emilio Rojas, Phil Aid, Mr. Mother effing Esquire, um, and everyone else showed up too. It was one of the craziest nights. It was so much fun. So this is my Kendrick story along with my first little gossip drama situation with Danny Brown and Mac Miller. Um, so the funny thing is, I was going through a bunch of my double XL magazines because I still have about 100 of these. And I found this one from 2010. So it was right before they started the break. That was in 2011. And their show and prove section was featuring Kendrick Lamar. So I thought that was funny. Anyway, moving on. So the night is in December 2011, and I'm on my way to SOB's. The line is literally around the corner down the block. And I was like, I'm going to have to find out how to get in here so I don't miss the show. So next to SOB's is this like business building. I think it's like a FedEx at a real estate agency or something. So one of my good friends who's also a photographer and a blogger, he was like, I think there's a back door. Anyway, I go in through this business building and somehow find the back door into SOBs. Don't know how that happened, but I got in. And thank God I did. So it starts off with King Mez and then Emilio Rojas and then Phil Aid and then Mr. Mother effing Esquire, who brought out Troy Ave. And I don't know if any of you knew Troy Ave, but that stage was about 30 dudes deep. Troy Ave, I think, was in a full fur jacket. It was just very New York. Let me tell you that. So we're all downstairs where like the artists hang out and the bloggers and the journalists and all that. And this is my first little tidbit of drama in the industry. So Mac Miller was there, which I was super excited to meet, and also Danny Brown, who I like Danny Brown's music. And I just read this article about how Danny Brown had said to Mac Miller or said about Mac Miller that he wasn't a fan, he didn't like him, da da da. And so I went to interview Danny Brown and I was like, so, like, how come you don't like Mac Miller? Not knowing, Mac was like within earshot of us, and Danny got so mad. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And Mac didn't care. He was very sweet and very nice. But that was my first beef with an artist because he started talking crap about me. I ended up running into Danny Brown a few years later at a music festival in upstate, and we squashed it. He gave me a hug. He said it's all good. He remembered though, so that was kind of cool. Um, anyway, moving on to the main event. So Kendrick comes on. He's the headliner, and it was like right when he was about to be insane. He came out in his red hoodie, exactly what he did for that Juneteenth show. And he starts out with bringing out ASAP, and ASAP had just released his first big debut album, Long Live uh, Pesos, if I got that right. I hope. Um, Correction, I was wrong. It was Live Love ASAP. My bad. So everyone loved him in New York, so the crowd went wild. And then he brought out his label mate, J Rock, and it was just the most unbelievable thing to watch. Um, I'm pretty sure Spoke Dizza was there. Like anyone you could think of in the industry that night was there. It was probably the most jam-packed show I've ever seen. But if you've never been to SOBs, it's probably the size of like your local bar. It is not big. You could not move in there. And downstairs, where it's like the green room, where the artists and the journalists are supposed to be, was even more packed. It was total chaos, but in the best way possible. So I was lucky enough to meet Mac Miller, which I hold deeply to my heart, and he was very sweet and very nice. And I got an amazing amount of photos, and I'm gonna throw some of them up now.
Boom, boom, boom. This is gonna feel real good, alright? Most dope. Everybody please put a thumb in the air. Hey. 1, 2, 3, 4. Some crazy ass kids coming to knock up on your door, so let 'em in, let 'em in, let 'em in.
Shows like that I feel like just don't happen anymore. It was also hosted by Sway from back in that day was MTV. Now it's ESPN. But it was just like a collective of amazing creative artists that you don't see come together at a small venue like that anymore. So it's one of those nights I felt super lucky to be involved in. That's that story for now. So for back in the day artists that I wanted to feature, I'm doing somebody who's already pretty famous, Trinidad James, but I don't know if people know like how amazing he's still doing, how much music he still makes, how in the fashion world he is. I moved to Atlanta right around where Be Safe came out. Um, I got to see him perform at the indie show in Atlanta, and then funny enough, I was traveling to I think it was like College Music Week in New York the same day he was from Atlanta. So we ended up getting to the airport around the same time, watching him take off all of his gold jewelry at the TSA was a show. But so he had released uh all gold everything literally like that week. We go to College Music Week. On the way back, which was like 4 days later maybe, um Diddy, Meek Mill, everyone was tweeting about him and that song. Like the blow up for just the 3 days we were away was the most insane thing I've ever had. And then I was lucky enough to be at his next music video shoot with Forte Bowie. And they're both so amazing, and the video was great. It's super fun to be at and see the behind the scenes and the way he works and how creative he is. So, if you guys don't still follow him, make sure you do. He's a creative genius, and I just love seeing everything he does. And his music is so happy and uplifting. So go check him out here.
Double Dutch, you playing with my paper, girl. You the police, you my biggest hater. If you wanna go, let's go.
So the next artist I'm gonna spotlight that's like up and coming. I mean, he's a little more known. I was introduced to him through, I think, something that Tyler the Creator put up on his Instagram one time. La Reezy. He's a New Orleans rapper and he's an independent right now. He is such a cool flow, amazing to listen to. He's actually on tour with Chance the Rapper right now, so go check out those dates and give him a listen. He just released a new song, so make sure you guys check him out, and here's all of his ads here.
Hottest day in the south, 100 degrees, it's burning, burning. The ambulance hot, the cops been hot all day, it's urgent, urgent. The chicken play.
So that was tonight's story. I have a few more little gossip drama stories, mostly how Chris Brown and Drake hated me on Twitter and blocked me a few times. It's probably because I refused to call Drake Drake and always called him Aubrey on my blog and used the pictures from Degrassi every time I posted about him. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. Next week, we will probably do the music video because that's a fun story and there's a lot of people to talk about that came through in that story. And hopefully we'll have some special guests coming up for you too. So make sure you stay tapped in and follow and like and all that. And thanks. Bye.
All right, y'all, enough of that. It's time to go to bed, y'all. Time to go to bed. I don't want to hear.